Denmark. We've sent our sons and daughters to fight in Helmand. Many have come home crippled, many have died. We've spent billions in taxpayer money. And of course, I think many people are wondering, was it worth the sacrifice? Are you grateful for the Danish soldiers and what they have done?
Absolutely. I was at the memorial site for Danish soldiers who lost their lives in Afghanistan and elsewhere this morning. I was honored to be there, and the soldiers who lost their lives in Afghanistan, those who got wounded in Afghanistan, and the money that was spent in Afghanistan by the Danish people has worked a long way in bringing improvements to the Afghan lives. Danish assistance in education, in rural development, in reform of the administration has been a big tool of improvement to our country.
If you should mention one thing that...
The consequences, for example, in 2002 we had less than 500,000 children in school. Today we have nearly 9 million children in school. Well, that's a big change. That means millions of girls and boys going to school. Rural development has caused upliftment to millions of Afghans in rural societies of Afghanistan. The betterment in the health services for women, maternity and childcare is an immense contribution to Afghanistan. And the Danish help has been at the forefront of this assistance in a very direct and tangible way. So it has made a contribution towards betterment. We recognize it in Afghanistan and are very thankful to the Danish people for it.
However, recently it seems you have become more skeptical of the international forces present in Afghanistan. You've said that the war is ours, it's not yours. You've even accused the United States of supporting the Taliban. Well, given that without Operation Enduring Freedom you would not be where you are now, what has changed?
That's a different aspect of it. While we are grateful to the international community's contributions in Afghanistan's social and economic upliftment, I believe very strongly, and for a number of years now, quite a few years now, that the war on terror could have been conducted differently and better. That the war on terror, as the United States and other members of the international community have been saying, that the presence of sanctuaries is not in Afghanistan, that it is in Pakistan. That the training grounds are not in Afghanistan, that that's beyond Afghanistan. So should be the conduct of the war on terror. You cannot have sanctuaries somewhere and the war conducted elsewhere. So Afghanistan was not in the first place where one should have conducted the war on terror with such massive casualties to the Afghan people. The Afghans highly and very much clearly appreciate the contributions of the international community, especially Denmark, for what they've done to improve the livelihood of the Afghan people. But where a wrongly conducted war on terror has caused the Afghan people suffering and casualties, of course, I, as the president of Afghanistan, had to raise my voice and bring awareness.
So you're saying that the sanctuaries of terrorism is on the other side of the border in Pakistan, actually.
Definitely.
Are you also saying that Pakistan is financing and training the Taliban who go to Afghanistan to fight?
Yes. Well, the sanctuaries are there. The whole world is talking about it, and the Pakistani government officials don't deny it anymore themselves.
But do you say that the Pakistan intelligence service or the government agencies in somehow are involved?
Well, they admit now that they have influence over the Taliban. Now, you can interpret influence in many ways, but the fact is that they have influence over the Taliban, they are in contact with the Taliban, and this is exactly what we are talking to them about frequently. When we say the peace process cannot be helped without Pakistan, that's what we mean. And it's from a point of view of realism, not of criticism, that we say that. That without Pakistan, peace in the region, and a proper war against extremism and radicalism cannot be successful.
I suppose then you're saying also that peace in Afghanistan cannot be reached without peace with the Taliban. And I believe you have said often that the Taliban are your brothers. Initially, you supported them when they took power. But the Taliban, on the other side, are refusing to even speak with you. Are you the right man to make peace with the Taliban?
The Taliban are our brothers in the sense that they are Afghans. Those who are Afghans, they are our countrymen. The countrymen are brothers. Are they making mistakes? Yes. Should they come back to their country and free themselves from the yoke of external influence? Yes. The Taliban that we talk to individually all want to talk to the Afghan government. That's the only place you can talk to. But where they are to speak collectively, they don't have the freedom to speak collectively, to say that they want to talk to the Afghan government. I hope they will.
But the Taliban leaders don't recognize you as a leader of,
they do
of
talk
the
to
Afghan
us.
nation. So how can you make peace?
Well, they have to say something about that, or they will lose the reason to fight. As far as sloganeering is concerned, of course, they must have a slogan. But the reality is that they are talking to us. The reality is that they even inform us of what is going on in terms of their abilities or lack of abilities politically, the freedoms that they have or that they don't have. So the contact is much deeper and broader. Why does that not turn into a peace process? Is because the peace process actually with Pakistan. And without Pakistan contribution, and without a stronger Pakistan-Afghan relationship, a peace process will not be as successful as we desired.
Told a German newspaper only a few weeks ago that with regard to the election next year, that even Mullah Omar could run for president next year. Is this something that you think is likely? Have you discussed it with Mullah Omar?
It's not the likeliness or the unlikeliness that was the point there at that interview. The point was the principle. The Afghan constitution allows every Afghan citizen to enjoy the rights and privileges of the constitution and to have the responsibilities given to them by the constitution. So the Afghan constitution has given all Afghan citizens the right to vote and to stand for gaining votes. Within that ambit of the constitutional rights, Mullah Omar has the right to stand as a citizen of Afghanistan in elections and to fight elections or to vote in elections.
I'd like to touch a little more on the election held next year. It's supposed to be on the 5th of April 2014. And of course, it's an interesting question, as you could also hear the Prime Minister say to us in Denmark, because we would like to see, I think, Afghan move in a way of transparency and democracy and freedom. Yes. You, of course, are unable to be re-elected next year. However, there have been suggestions that you will actually not let the election go on, take place as planned. Can you guarantee here today that the election will be held on April 5th next year as planned?
Why would I not want the elections? How is it in my interest? I would be a very liked person in Afghanistan if I conducted an election that was good, that brought in a new president, that continued with stability in Afghanistan, that continued with the constitutional process in Afghanistan, and that I lived happily as the ex-president of Afghanistan. So for my own legacy, this is important. We all want to have a legacy behind in whatever way we can. And for me, the biggest legacy will be an Afghanistan that sees a good process through, that sees the next president, and that continues to build on what we have achieved in the past 10 years.
So you could actually guarantee today that the election will be held on
Definitely, as far as the Afghans are concerned, yes, definitely.
And who would you like to see as your successor?
Well, I can't say that. I definitely will have, preferences among a few people. But it's for the Afghan people to determine as to who the next president will be.
And the next president and the new Afghanistan, who would be the main ally of Afghanistan in the future, as you see it?
In terms of the international community?
Yes.
The United States. We're working with the United States, a partnership agreement that we already signed with them. We are now working on the security agreement. NATO is the other ally of Afghanistan. European Union is working with us on a partnership deal. India, China, our neighbors, the Muslim world. We have an expanded and broad relationship.
But you mentioned the United States as
that will be the
first
main
country.
ally. Yes.
Will the United States be allowed to have bases, military bases in Afghanistan in the future?
We are negotiating that. We are negotiating that. When you ask the Afghan people whether they would like to give bases to the Americans, they would say yes. But the United States must make sure that Afghanistan is peaceful, must make sure that Afghanistan is strong, has a good army, has a good government, and has a good economy. With these four things given to us, the Afghan people will be very much willing to give the United States what it needs in Afghanistan.
And do you think it would be possible to make peace with the Taliban, as I understand
Yes.
it? It's very important when you have American bases, American troops permanently
Absolutely.
in Afghanistan.
Absolutely, absolutely. We know, I know for a fact, the Taliban speak to me that they want to return to Afghanistan, that they want to have peace in their country, and they also told us, told me rather more directly in direct conversations that they believe that a relationship with America is important and that it should continue.
But why is it then that this first quarter of this year has seen twice as many almost, or a 50% increase, in Taliban attacks in Afghanistan compared to last year?
We don't see it as such. We see this as matter as usual. And of course we want very much that there should not be a single incident of insecurity in Afghanistan. Any civilians lost by the Taliban or by the NATO or American forces is a loss to Afghanistan, is a loss to a human being. So our concentration is on reducing casualties, on bringing fighting to an end by whatever means possible. And one of those means, the most important of those means, is the peace process.
I'd like to jump to the subject of corruption and transparency. Transparency International lists Afghanistan in the top 3 most corrupt countries in the world, along with North Korea and Somalia. What have you done to address that problem?
I don't agree with that assessment, first of all. I think they have made the statement whether they've gone to Afghanistan and studied the Afghan environment or separated the issues or not is a question to me. There is corruption in Afghanistan, no doubt. But it is among the more transparent governments in the world. If you take the World Bank's view of Afghanistan, they're speaking with admiration of Afghan budgetary systems and the expenditure of resources. The same as with the IMF. Now, corruption is there, but it is more in contracts. And the contracts are not done by Afghans. The contracts are done more by the international community, more by the Americans. So in terms of the resource expenditure on programs and projects, we are fully accountable and responsible for the expenditure and implementation of those programs. Where contracts are, where big money is, that's not our responsibility, that's elsewhere.
Naturally, this is of interest to Denmark, since Afghanistan from this year on is the biggest recipient of Danish aid. Will you be able to guarantee, can you guarantee that Danish tax money does not end in corruption?
Absolutely. With absolute certainty. I can stand before the Danish people and tell them that the Afghan government will do great justice to the money that you give to the Afghan people. Provided that money is given through the Afghan government, through the Afghan budgetary system, and for which we will be responsible. The money given to the NGOs or to UN or to other agencies that we have no control over is not, of course, our responsibility. We cannot be answerable there.
But talking about secret payments, let's turn to a subject that came up this week. For 10 years, the CIA has delivered bags filled with
Yes.
cash to your
Yes.
office, sometimes
Yes.
in suitcases, sometimes in rucksacks, sometimes in shopping bags. At the presidential palace, you call it ghost money, according to a former deputy chief of staff named Khalil Roman, for the simple reason that the money comes in secret, arrives in secret, and it leaves in secret, as he says. How much money has your office received in this way from the CIA?
When we began our government 10 years ago, various departments in the US government and other governments began to have interaction with their counterpart departments, and assistance began to flow to them. This money began to arrive in the National Security Council's office and in the Afghan Intelligence Department's office as counterparts of the US intelligence for operational purposes, daily operations. Now, the intelligence department has its own business of spending it in manners and on matters that they see important. The Office of the National Security Council spends this money on various accounts, from assistance to government officials in policy matters, to money for the sick and wounded, immediate handouts in emergency conditions.
Do you know how much money we're talking about?
I'm coming to that. To even education bills for some students, to scholarships, to house rents, to all sorts of and all manners of assistance. And accountably, an account is given back to the CIA on that as to how it is spent. So this is money very well spent. I know it is well spent because it's done under my instructions. And it's a worthy assistance to our system.
And how much was it?
Huh?
How much?
I will not disclose that to you without taking permission from the US government. So, but this is not a big amount, I can tell you that.
But
monthly, it's a small amount. Over a year, it becomes a big amount.
It seems an unusual way of doing business. I'd like to ask you, what is the difference?
It is not an unusual way of doing business.
But what is the difference between receiving ghost money and handing out cash payments and corruption?
This is not corruption. This is assistance. All governments have operational money. I'm sure you have it in Denmark. I'm sure the Danish intelligence has ways of operations. That's done in cash. So our intelligence does the same in cash and time. So I'm sure all the intelligence agencies do that, and I'm sure all the governments do that. But it's a different level of organization. Your society, your government is organized so effectively for so many years, where the needs of your officials and government employees are different and done through other systems. In our case, with the kind of organization that we have in our government and society, we need to be directly at times paying assistance to people so that they can go in and get their work done. So you're talking of totally different levels of growth and institutional order.
So after the election is held next year, of course you will be out of power. Historically, leaders in Afghanistan have either been assassinated or they've been forced into exile when they step down.
That's not true.
Where will you live?
That's not true. That's not true. Afghanistan is a very old country. The former king of Afghanistan, he was in exile when there was all this trouble in Afghanistan, and then I went back to Rome and came back with him to Afghanistan. And he stayed there, and he died there, and is buried there.
But he was in exile. Do you intend to live in Afghanistan after the election?
Absolutely.
What role will you have?
Ex-president. Very happily. There's a lot of speculation in the Western media about these things. That's not how things are. I'll be in my country, I'll be in the capital, the government is already building a house for me.
Yes. But you know, if you look at Afghan history, and this is my final question, most, if not all, great figures in Afghan history have been rebels. They've been leaders of armed rebellions who have ousted the mighty and powerful in Kabul. When history books are being written, how would you like to be remembered?
No, it's not like that. I'll be remembered by the account of the past 10 years. And it's a great account. Afghanistan became the home for all Afghans for the first time, again, after so many years of upheaval and each one demanding it alone, the groups. Afghanistan became a democracy. Education rose, so many hundreds of percentages in the past 10 years. A better economy, a free media, and Afghanistan presence on the international stage. And I hope a good election for the president. That's what I'll be remembered for.
Thank you very much.
Good, good.